Hey everybody, welcome back to the 80s Slashers YouTube channel. In this video, I thought I would go ahead and talk about some of the 80s slashers that I feel are some of the most overrated films within the subgenre. Now these films here, these are not what we're talking about, of course. These are some of the films that I had included in an earlier video on underrated films, if you haven't seen that one, you can go back. There's a video here, and some of these ones are showcased, I guess, in that video. Yeah, and these are just some of the films that I feel, my personal opinion, that were underrated for various reasons. Whether it's something to do with the ending of a film, one certain plot point twist, or just a 3D element. There are various reasons why I view some of these films as being underrated. A lot of you guys seem to, enjoy that video. So I said I was going to do another one of talking about my most overrated 80s slashers, and this one is probably going to elicit some more strong comments, I would think. Uh, so we're gonna get into it really soon. But before I get into this, just remember, this is just my opinion. If this is gonna be tricky because it's not that I dislike these films that I'm about to talk about. Some of them I actually like, but it's more about from my perspective of just how they're overrated. From what I've seen and read online, and people's YouTube videos and all that stuff. Just I'm kind of I follow in the horror community. I kind of have an idea of what people think, and majority of people. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I view some of these next films as just being overrated for one reason or another. And, there's going to be people who are going to be disagreeing with me because obviously um, they're films that people like a lot, and I feel like, maybe they shouldn't be liked as much. But again, highly subjective. I know I'm still going to get the comments. Some people are going to agree with me. Some people are going to think I'm crazy for some of these films. But yeah, that's why we do these videos, I guess, right? Just to talk about it and have other people's different opinions and perspectives, and yeah, all that good stuff. All right, let's just get into it, and I guess we're gonna start off with we're gonna start off with the one that most people who follow this channel know exactly what's probably gonna be up. So I'm just gonna we'll start with the big one, and we'll go from there. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so first up we have here is A Nightmare on Elm Street. Um, And you're saying which film? Because this is the Nightmare on Elm Street Blu-ray collection. Um, so you're probably wondering, like, well, which of these films is one of the most overrated? I'm gonna say the whole franchise. Now, um, I look, I know people love these films. This is some people's favorite horror franchise of all time. Um, And I get that, and unless I'm not saying that every film in this franchise is bad, because they're not. There's some bad films in this franchise, and I will argue to the end of the day that parts 5 and part 6 are just they're atrocious. They're just I don't know what they are. But uh, I want to just talk about this whole franchise, like as a whole. Um, Now, like I said, like the biggest reason why I think this is overrated is just because of how much love this franchise has. And people love this, man. People love parts one. People love part three. A lot of people, there's a lot of fans of part two and part four, and then parts, 5 and 6. There is people who like parts 5 and 6 for some reason. Most are in agreement with me that those are terrible films. And part four is, it's straddling that line. Um, you know, those are like the 80s. I don't know, part six isn't an 80s film, but we're talking mostly the 80s films here on this channel. See, here's the thing for me. I'm a horror fan. I like my horror films to be scary. Can we have some humor? Yes, we can have some humor in some of these films. Parts 1 through 3 do a pretty good job of sticking to the horror elements. There's other parts of those films that I don't necessarily like, but talking about the horror elements, um, yeah, they're pretty good. Part 1, Freddy Krueger is actually scary in part 1, and even part 2. After that, he starts to morph into, like, the early films. He had like those one-liners, the clever, quirky one-liners, which were good. That's what I like in these in horror films. A little bit of humor injected. Uh, but it became too popular, and it overtook the character of Freddy Krueger. And by the time parts 4 and parts 5 and part 6 came along, he was like a caricature of his former self. He was like a cartoon character. It was just the whole franchise went off the rails. Um, so when I think of this franchise, people are always comparing, the big three: Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween. And when these three franchises are discussed, which is the better, a lot of people, this is their favorite as a whole. We're talking about the franchise as a whole. And I can't get behind that, just because uh for me at least, like, a majority of this franchise is just not strong. It's not in terms of horror films. If you're looking at these for fun, to make jokes and have some drinks and laugh with friends, then yeah, it's good for that. But when we're talking strictly for like horror franchises, this is not in my opinion, this is just not a strong franchise. Like, you get like one or two films, and it trickles off from there. At least, like I said, my favorite is Friday the 13th of those. And yeah, is every film perfect? No, they're not. But they're all pretty respectable. The first 6 films in that franchise have some redeeming qualities, and they all kind of follow the format. They're pretty similar. Even part 7 and 8, again, very similar to the earlier films. The quality starts to drop off because the ideas were running out, and it's the same with this, and same with Halloween. The more movies you get, the quality is going to degrade. It's just the way it is. There's not many ideas to go around. Um, and that happens with this one too. But then you throw in like the humor, which makes this just such a weird franchise. And then there's the supernatural element. And again, this is highly subjective and based on my personal taste, but I don't like I shouldn't say I don't like it. I don't prefer I prefer my slasher films more straight up horror, more something that could, I guess, actually happen to you. That's the element that makes it scary. Like, you could go to a camp, and there could be a serial killer on the loose, and you have to run and hide, and your friends get killed. That could happen. Um, with these films, it's made up. It's not really plausible. And that kind of, as an adult, it takes something away from me. When I was a kid, I should say that when I was a kid, um, these films were scary. They frightened me quite a bit. Um, but as I've aged, I think that's what it is. It just they don't these films haven't held up very well. Um, transitioning into adulthood, because it's just they're too silly. They're too they're just not plausible. Like, the concept is amazing. Like, the first film, the concept, that Wes Craven came up with, is just so good. It's frightening. The fact that you could go to sleep and be killed in your sleep, and there's nothing you can do because everyone has to sleep, and if there's a killer waiting for you in your dreams, it's brilliant. It really is a brilliant concept. And Freddy, like I said, in those first film was truly scary, a little bit funny, just the right amount of funny. His weapon was very unique. His look was unique. Yeah, it's no wonder it like kicked off like a phenomena. Like, he took over like the horror world. Everybody loved Freddy. Um, and it's all because of that brilliant concept. But it got old really fast, and like I said, it doesn't really hold up too well these days for me. Um, I don't know. I could go on about this, and I know people are like opposite of me, and they just I don't know. I just think it's overrated. I don't think this belongs in the same conversation with the Friday film when you're talking about horror and like in particular 80s slashers, because it's just it's for me it's nowhere near the highs of that franchise. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts. I've just always thought that. Yeah, they scared me when I was younger, but as an adult, they're just not something I want to go back and watch and revisit just because I don't know. They're just I don't know. I just don't enjoy them. They're not really fun for me anymore. They don't scare me. They don't make me laugh. They kind of make me cringe. The later films, of course. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Just kind of a little overrated, more riding on its name than the quality of the films itself, in my opinion, of course. All right, let's get off this one and let's take a look at the next one. All right, so the next one we have here is Madman. Now, this I have this one on. Now, I don't dislike this film. I don't think this is a bad film by any means, but I had to include this on this list because a few years back when I was really getting into the 80s slasher genre, and really starting to research it and try to track down and watch as many of these films as I could. This is one I had never heard of before, like maybe 5, 10 years ago. I don't know. And yeah, I had never heard of Mad Men before. And you go on the internet and you type in like rank the best 80 slashers, 10 best 80 horror films, blah blah blah. And this film kept coming up high on a lot of these lists. I saw some lists that had this, within the top five, within the top 10. It was consistently up there. So and I'd never heard of it, and like I read the concept or like the synopsis of the plot. It takes place at like a camp with counselors and children, and I was like, oh man, how have I never heard of this film? I'm just I was so hyped for this. I was so excited to see this. So this is one of when I first started collecting 80 slashers on Blu-ray. This was at the top of my list. This is when I had to get. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna become one of my new favorites. It's most people's top five, top 10 slashers, up there with the Friday films and the Burning and Slumber Party Massacre. It was discussed amongst those. So I was overhyped. Um, and then of course I got it and I watched it. And like I said, I don't think it's a bad film. It definitely has its moments, but yeah, I was really disappointed. This is probably one of the biggest disappointments I've had because I was so hyped. Um, I don't know, it's just something about this film. Like it looks really cool that they use a good like a lot of like the blue, like, shadowy, like the cinematography. It looks cool. Like I said, it's at a summer camp, but it just didn't do much for me. The whole plot was kind of silly. Again, it's based on like almost like an urban legend or something like that. That doesn't really go over too well with me. The killer was, I don't know, kind of goofy looking. Wasn't very scary. The characters did like a whole bunch of stupid stuff that always just like when there's like plot inconsistencies, like the characters doing stuff or like someone just doing something all the time that just really annoying. There's a couple characters in here that do that. It just I don't know, it just drives me crazy. And there was some pretty good kills, there's some good moments for sure. This has like the weirdest sex scene in any movie, 80 slasher movie. It's like a hot tub scene, and it's so bizarre. And it's kind I kind of like it for that, just because that's what I think when I think of Madman. I just think of that hot tub scene, how weird and strange it is. I don't know. I just this isn't a top tier film like The Burning and Friday the 13th. It doesn't belong up there, but that's where it was presented to me when I first discovered it. So yeah, I feel like it's a little overrated. I'm sure there's people who like this film quite a bit, obviously, and yeah, I'm sure they have their reasons. And you know what? It's been a while since I've seen this, so I probably should go back to this and rewatch it. Maybe my thoughts will change. Um, Now that I don't have those high expectations, maybe uh, a revisit is warranted, and maybe I'll like it a little more. I don't know. So, but yeah, I had to include this just because, like I said, it was one of the most hyped films in the genre for me, and it just for whatever reason it just really let me down. So yeah, Madman. All right, let's move on and take a look at the next one. All right, so up next we have Silent Night, Deadly Night 2. Um, Now again, this is another one where I don't hate this film because it has its redeeming qualities. It's fun. It is fun. But again, this is one that I hadn't seen for a while, but it's it all Christmas time, it pops up everywhere. People talking about their favorite Christmas holiday horror films. It's all over the place. People love to quote people always like to yell, garbage time, all that stuff, or garbage day. Sorry, there's a garbage day. Um, and yeah, that's all fun stuff. But then when I actually sat down and watched this, and everybody who knows about this film, this is I don't know how long is this movie. It's like well, I don't know. It's like an hour and a half, right? And I think like 40 minutes of that hour and a half is recapping Silent Night, Deadly Night, the first film. And it's kind of hard to sit through, especially like, if you watch part one, and you move on to part two. It's like you're watching part one a second time. Like it shows a lot of that film, but none of the good stuff. It cuts, most of the blood and the nudity and all that stuff out. So you have to sit through it just to hear the story. And then when it does cut to part two, it's mostly just like an interview of like a doctor or something in a room with the other child, um, Ricky, Billy's younger brother, and it's just him. They're going back and forth telling lines. So that's part of the new footage. And then, at the end of the film, like you get some new stuff, which is fun, which is that the garbage day and all that stuff comes up. But that's only really like, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes of new footage. And that footage is awesome, don't get me wrong. It's so cheesy and funny, and some of the kills are fantastic. I really like the little bits that you get, and it is worth it. But man, to sit through the first part, it's a chore for me, like because I've seen part one so many times. If I want to watch that, I'll watch part one. I don't want to re-watch it and like splice it together with the fun scenes in this one. So I wish there was like an alternate take. You could just kind of, if they just omitted the part one scene somehow just to make it work, like so it would flow nicely. And you can just kind of see Ricky's story by itself. It would be great. It would be like 20 minutes, but it would still be a really good short film. And but yeah, man, this film gets talked up a lot. It gets like always getting nice Blu-ray releases and like action figures. It's really hyped because those 15, 20 minutes are really good. Like they're fun, they're quotable, they're cheesy, yeah, but it doesn't deserve the praise and the hype that it gets, I think, just because it's not really a full movie, and it's just I don't know, I just feel like it's definitely overrated. There should be like a warning label, for people who are watching it for the first time, like, this is be prepared to watch part one again because that's what this mostly is. So I don't know. It's too bad. Like I said, I like the new filmed scenes in this film are really good and they're really fun. And it's just you feel like you almost have to fast forward through all the parts just to watch the parts that you want to get to. So I don't know. Um, yeah, I'm sure most people agree. I'm sure people love you know the scenes of Ricky. I'm sure because they are fun, but it's kind of a chore. So anyway, that's enough about Silent Night, Deadly Night Part Two. Um, all right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so up next we have Halloween 4 and Halloween 5, and Yeah, I guess I could, like, we're talking about the 80s films, but I could lump in part six as well. So yeah, here we go again. Listen, I don't want to dump on the Halloween franchise as much as I dumped on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. I prefer the Halloween franchise over Nightmare on Elm Street, but most of the stuff I talked about with Nightmare kind of applies to this one. I don't feel like this is a I don't feel like this is a super strong franchise from beginning to end. And, not many franchises are, like I said. I feel like that's why I like Friday the 13th better, because I feel like those first eight films, they're pretty good, in my opinion. Um, Halloween, the franchise, oh man, I don't want to pick on these two films because I like part four. I do think this is good, but I can't help but link it with this one and with part six. It's kind of like a little trilogy at the end of the 80s, early 90s there. And it begins with this film, which, again, I kind of like. There's a lot of good stuff I like about part four. I don't like part five too much, and I really don't like part six. Um, and it just again, it's the same thing. People talk about the Halloween franchise and it's their favorite. People are like Halloween fanatics. It can't go wrong. Everything they put out was gold. And I just look at these two. I should have got part six, but I look at these two films plus part six, and I'm like, man, like, are we forgetting about these? Like, it really, these films kind of made the franchise like just come to a screeching halt. Like, they just, between part six and what was the next one, H2O, that was, I don't know, like almost a 10-year break. Um, the franchise just got really weird, and just like Nightmare, man, like they got away from what made the first two films work so well. Just give us like a killer who's on the hunt, stalking teenagers, doing what they usually do in these sorts of films, and put them in a fun setting or get some new characters. That's all you need to do. But then they felt the need to start injecting these like supernatural plot points and these extra family sibling. They keep introducing new characters like in the storyline, like, oh, Michael has a sister and his sister has a daughter and a cousin and all that. It just gets blurry and blurry, and it's getting further and further away from like the meat and bones of what these films should be about. Is a serial killer is on the loose, and he's hunting teenagers for no reason. You don't have to have a reason. They can just go out and start killing people, and that's what we want. I don't want to hear about religious cults and druids and Michael having a trying to force his baby on his sister. Like, it just, man, like, it just got really weird at these part, and it just really brought the whole franchise down for me, and they had to like kind of reboot it. How many times has this franchise been rebooted? This is technically kind of a reboot, after part two ended, and then H2O was kind of a reboot, and they kind of rebooted again with Resurrection, and then the zombie films, and then now the new 2018. It just, there's been no continual um like plot point that they could, because they keep writing themselves into these weird corners, and this is like the first time it showed up for me. Again, this is just my opinion. There's some good stuff in these films. There's a lot of a lot of things to like in these films. Like I said, I quite like Halloween 4. But it's the introduction of Danielle Harris's character, and it gets weird, like the psychic link between Michael. It's just none of it's explained well. It doesn't work really well for me. Uh, I don't know. It just, a lot of people like these films. A lot of people like this for good reason. A lot of people like this film and part six. And like, there's those two cuts of part six, the producer's cut and the theatrical. And people are like, oh, well, this is the better cut. This is the better version. They're both bad, in my opinion. Like, it doesn't matter what cut it is. The whole part six is a mess. Um, I don't know, man. It's just, I wish I liked these more, but I just, parts one, parts two, and part three, which isn't really a Michael Myers film. I like a lot. I love those films. And then, I like H2O and I like some of the zombie stuff, and the newer ones are good as well. So it's a pretty solid franchise that elevates it way ahead of Nightmare on Elm Street for me. But this is the part where the franchise that it just really bogs down for me, and I just can't get into them. It's just maybe it's just me, but I don't know. So that's enough about Halloween. I don't want to. This is the Halloween season. I don't want to anger too many people, but I know I'm not alone in thinking like this is kind of like the I don't know the black sheep of the franchise these years here, but I don't know. Yeah, Halloween 4, 5, and 6. Not the greatest. All right, I got one more, so let's move on and we'll take a look. All right, so up last we have April Fool's Day. And if you've been following this channel, I've talked about this quite a bit. And again, this is a very divisive film, so I don't know if it's technically like really overrated because a lot of people do agree with my thoughts on this, but then just as many people are on the other side. So I guess that's why I included it here just for half the people. Um, who like this film. And again, it's not a film I hate. Man, I wish I liked this film more. There's a lot going for it. And this film's an hour and a half. I like about an hour and 20 minutes of this film. And man, I wish I liked the last 10. Because like there's a lot going for it. I like the concept of the film. It's the April Fool's Day. These holiday type slashers are always good ideas. The cast is great. You got Amy Steele, you got Deborah Foreman, you got Biff from Back to the Future. One of the what's that other guy? One of the young, I forget his name. Um, anyway, one of the oh man, it's gonna drive me crazy. He's like his father's famous from his brother. Whatever. Anyway, the cast is good. Really good cast. Really well made. It's a humorous film at times, but the humor works. Um, but yeah, the ending of this film just kind of spoils the whole thing for me. And I'm not gonna get into spoilers in case people haven't seen it. I know a lot of people watching this channel have seen it, but I don't want to get into like the ending of the film. But basically, the decisions that they made how to end this film really kind of um, made the rest of they kind of tied their hands. They kind of wrote themselves into a corner. And because of that, it kind of made the rest of the film a little too tame. Like what could have been, kind of one of those things. If only they would have went with a different decision at the end. And I don't know, like I get it. I get the title of the film and it works. Like the plot works. And it's not like it's a messy plot and it doesn't work. Like after you see it, like, oh yeah, everything works. Like there was no like big plot holes or nothing like that. I just don't like the decision that they did because, like I said, it really limited the kills and the blood and the realism and like the horror elements because they couldn't do that or the script wouldn't work at the end. And you'd be like, well, how does this ending make sense when this earlier scene showed this and this and this? Like, you can't show like a full head decapitation or a full arm being ripped off and someone you couldn't do any of that because of the way that they decided to end the film. And it just man, I just it kind of angers me because everything else of this film, the potential was so good. um I don't know. And it doesn't bother some people, which is good for them. Like, I wish that was me, because people love this film, and I get it. I get why people like it. Like, because the first hour and 20 minutes are really good. They're entertaining, good acting, good fun. And if, yeah, once you get to the ending, if it doesn't bother you and you're like, oh, that was great, then yeah, it deserves the credit that it seems to get. Like, a lot of people like this film. Unfortunately for me, I don't like the ending, and it ruins the previous experience. Like, man, I don't know. I just because of that, I'm gonna put it as overrated just because it didn't stick the landing for me and it kind of affected the rest of the film. It's as simple as that. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know. That's all I have to say about that, I guess. Too bad. Like such a good cast. Ah, what's that guy? Is it Garrett? Leaf Garrett? No, is it Leaf Garrett or is it the one of the young actors, man? He got in trouble. It's gonna drive me nuts. It's not Garrett, it's anyway, whatever. April Fool's Day, a what could have been sort of film for me. Alright everyone, so that's it. That's just some controversial, I guess. My opinions on some 80s slashers that I feel are overrated for one reason or another. So take it easy in the comments on me, but yeah, I don't know. That's my thoughts. So all right, that's all I got for you today. So yeah, until next time. All right, see ya.